Okay guys, so I'm going to make it a multi-part series on the Caro-Kann. So this is going to be the first part of many videos. So in this particular video we're going to look at a certain line. So as you know, e4, c6 is a Caro-Kann. And by far the most common move is d4 here, and this is what we're going to look at. Also worth noting that knight c3 is another line, and after d5, knight f3 we get the two knights variation. But that's the topic of a different video. So e4, c6, d4, d5. Okay, so you're going to get this position in probably 90% of the games in the Caro-Kann. So after d5, white can play the advanced variation with e5, which is what we're going to cover here. So now we play bishop f5. This is the whole point of the Caro-Kann, to get the bishop outside the pawn chain. So bishop f5, and in this position white can usually chooses between knight c3 and h4. So knight c3 we're going to cover that in a different video, and in this video we're going to look at the move h4, which is actually a tricky move, and we're going to see why. So after h4, if black's not paying attention, we're going to get, so for example e6 is a big mistake, because after g4 and f3 the bishop is going to get trapped, so we have to be a little bit more careful. So in this position we either go h5 or h6. So h5 is a fine move, nothing wrong with it. It does relinquish g5 square because pawns can't go back, so often white's going to go bishop g5, knight f3. So in this video we're going to look at a different move after h4, which is h6. Now the main line here is g4, bishop e4, and after f3 bishop h7, and this is quite theoretical, but we're going to look at a different move for black after g4, which is bishop to d7. And at first it does look a bit strange, because why are we bringing the bishop back after we put it out the pawn chain? And our argument is really that this g4 pawn in many positions is going to be a weakness for white, because we're going to go c5, knight c6, queen b6, and pressure on d4. And in my experience, white often has a hard time kind of defending the d4 pawn, because white wants to go knight f3 or knight e2, but because we haven't played e6 yet, the bishop prevents knight f3 and knight e2. And bear in mind, my opponents are rated maybe between 23-2500, and this is often a problem for them. So, okay, a lot of the time my opponents play h5, and they try to expand on the king side. So we play in this position c5 to target the center. Okay, white defends with c3, and then we just keep developing with knight c6. And for example here, you can't go knight f3, you can't go knight e2, because immediately you drop the g4 pawn. So okay, so a lot of my opponents here play f4, which is not a good move, because after f4 we're going to take on d4, and in this position we actually have a choice of moves we can play. So we can even go queen c8 here. It's a tricky move. The idea is basically we're hitting the g4 pawn, of course, but our second threat is actually to take on d4, because if the queen takes on d4, the bishop is hanging on c1. So for example, bishop e2 to defend against g4, we can just take. So these are traps that white can easily fall for, even against higher rated opponents. Also possible is queen b6, because again you can't go knight f3 or knight e2 to defend the pawn because of the g4 pawn, and equally you can't go bishop e3 because b2 is going to fall. So after queen b6 white can go knight c3 and then queen d4 is just, you know, a particular line here. Knight d5, we trade queens, and to prevent this threat we just castle kingside. And you can see that white is kind of struggling here because g4 is hanging, and obviously if bishop e2 we're just going to win a piece, bishop e6. So white has to be careful of this, and f4 is not really a good move, but a lot of my opponents do play it even at 23 to 2500 level. Okay, so the line we just looked at is following the moves bishop d7 and then h5. White can also play, instead of h5, f4 immediately, and in this position, since white hasn't played h5, we play h5 ourselves. So h5 just to break up the pawn chain. So it looks like we're giving white a free pawn, but it's just not that good for white if he takes. So if he takes, we go knight h6, and yeah, basically white has ruined his king side here, so he's up a pawn temporarily. But we're going to go bishop f5 or bishop g4, e6, c5, and at some point either we're going to win back the h5 pawn or we're going to get c5 and d4. So this is not really good for white. Instead, white should play g5 here. And we play bishop g4 since it's supported by the pawn. Bishop e2. And instead of trading, we just play e6. So we kind of give white the ability to win a pawn here. So let's say white takes. So white's temporarily up a pawn. However, after c5 to target the center, d3, we just trade pawns here. And like before, white is kind of overexpanded here, so you can see the pawns are just more of a weakness than anything else. So after knight c6, we're just going to end up playing knight f5, and it's going to be difficult for white to defend the h4 pawn and the d4 pawn, and after the queen comes out to b6, also the b2 pawn. So this is also, you know, very reasonable. You can see that the engine thinks it's about equal. Yeah, so this is after the move f4 in this position. So we've covered h5 and f4. In this position, another move that white can play is c4. And now we do play e6. And after knight c3, which is just a natural developing move for white, we strike in the center with c5. Yeah, and if white's not too careful, so for example if he takes on d5 twice, then of course he's just going to lose the piece after bishop c6. So of course white shouldn't do that. He can take once, and usually, you know, just bishop e3 to defend the center. So in this position we're going to take on d4. You know, and another trap that white can fall for is after bishop d4, knight c6. Again, if white gets greedy here, then after bishop e6, you can see that white's put his pieces in a skewer. So if the knight moves out of the way, the bishop's going to fall. So, you know, white in this position usually takes with the queen. And we just develop. We allow white to take on d5. And we just develop with bishop b4. You know, and again, this is pretty, this is a kind of deep in a single line, but as you can see, it's just as an example, if white castles here, we're going to take on g4, and then after the ensuing endgame, we end up with a position where black has a slightly better pawn structure with 2 pawn islands versus 3 pawn islands for white, and the king can come to the queen side. So this is after the move c4 in this position, c4. So just e6, knight c3 and c5. So the last move that we're going to cover is knight c3 in this position. And again the idea is again c5. This is the most common theme. And like before, if white takes on d5, we're going to go bishop c6 with a skewer, and obviously if c4, e6, we win a piece. So white can't take there. Okay, yeah, so instead of taking on d5, the move that white should play is d takes c5. So in response to this, we want to go e6 because we want to defend the pawn here and also open up fire on the c5 pawn. Okay, so now white is going to defend this pawn with bishop e3, and in this position we want to go queen c7 because queen c7 both puts pressure here and also on e5. The problem is if we do it right away, we're going to run into knight b5, which is a problem because if we take now on e5, knight f3, and suddenly the queen is under attack, but if we move the queen out of the way, we're going to run into a fork on c7. So we can't right away go queen c7. First, we go a6, prevent knight b5, and now white reinforces the center with f4, and now we can get ready to win this pawn on c5. So queen c7, white's just going to develop, and we take on c5. And then after we develop a little bit more, white's going to castle queenside, and in this position, what we're going to try and do is get the bishop to b5. So, because if white ever takes on b5, we're going to open up the rook, and also the bishop is probably the worst piece at the moment for us. So to prepare this move, we're first going to go queen b6. Bishop d3, and now bishop b5. And if okay, I mean white probably shouldn't take here, but you know, if white takes, then the rook gets opened up, and otherwise we're just going to go knight c6, develop, and it's a relatively even position. So this is really if white plays, you know, perfect moves. So you can see that, you know, black has a very good, a very reasonable position. Now, and other than that, then of course there's plenty of traps that white can fall for, you know, in other lines that we've had a look at. Yeah, so that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. So just to summarize, so we looked at the advanced variation with white playing e5, bishop f5 that we play, and then we looked at the move h4, which is, you know, one of two moves, h4 knight c3. So after h4 we looked at h6, and in this position with bishop d7, which is considered a side line, it's not the main line. Yeah, so we looked at the moves h5, f4 and c4, and we looked at the various traps that white can fall into there, and also the main line probably was knight c3. So yeah, so thank you guys for watching. I'm going to continue with, you know, other lines in the Caro-Kann. So I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you for watching.